What if you don't need to know how to code to become a software engineer? I'm going to walk you through the exact prompts, tools, workflows, and just give you all the secrets to go from absolute beginner to deploying real applications. So this video is going to be a little bit longer, but it's going to contain everything you need to know to become a Vibe coder. From context windows to deploying a live database, here is a complete guide. So definitely check out the chapters below so you can jump ahead to any part you want to learn more about. And if you enjoy AI, don't forget to subscribe and like the video. I have already done full course guides on NotebookLM and Hilo AI. Let me know in the comments what full course video you want to see next. Alright, so what is vibe coding? When I started to learn how to code, I was 8 years old, I started with C++, I'd have to know the exact syntax to type in order for the computer to say, hey, he is trying to code this, let's make it work. Now with vibe coding and with the emergence of AI, we can actually just use natural language. We're going to dictate our vision and AI is going to just decide the rest. So basically we talk to AI, the AI is going to understand our vibes and then try to code what we want. It's going to share an output to us and then we can try it and then we can tweak it. So the entire process really depends on your vibes as you're coding, hence the name vibe coding. And the entire process has been made a lot easier. So you're no longer wasting time setting up environments. So I'm talking about compilers and ensuring you have the proper coding languages and packages all set up. AI can do it all for you. In this video, I am going to create 2 applications with you. We're going to go through the whole entire process from start to finish. We're going to try a desktop application with a backend and a front end. We're also going to do a web-based application. So there's going to be a lot of variety. But before we get to that, I want to talk about a couple of terms that will be helpful to understand when we are starting to vibe code. So when we are vibe coding, everything we do with an AI model is based around tokens. So what is a token? So imagine tokens kind of like English words. So cat would be 1 single token, where hamburger would be 3 tokens. We can break it up into ham, burr, and gur. So on average, 1 token works out to 4 characters within an English word. So why does this even matter when we're talking about vibe coding? Because when we're typing into the AI model, when we're trying to get it to code for us, it tokenizes your words, and that's how it actually understands what you want. Almost every model that you use to vibe code is purely based off tokens. Now, to a large language model, the word code with a capital C is completely different than the word code without a capital C. Why? Because it's a different number of tokens. So formatting, spacing, and just bad spelling within your prompt, you're basically making the AI process the word more to actually understand what you want. This will all affect your coding patterns. This will all affect the AI and how it figures out how to code your application. In certain programming languages like Python, white spaces are critical whether your application works or not. And AI sees the indentation as a token as well. So if your prompt is a big massive wall of unformatted text, AI might have a hard time trying to clean up your code. So the better your prompts, the better your code, the more you can actually use these models to do more coding for you. Tokens are important. We want to talk about memory now, and large language models don't really have any memory. AI isn't learning about your project as you chat to it. A large language model is essentially a frozen mathematical equation. So when you type in your prompt, you hit enter, it doesn't really remember anything you typed in prior. So Google, Claude, OpenAI, they all created something called a context window. So every time you send a new message, the interface also adds the context from your prior messages all together. So it can see the entire conversation when it's trying to process that data. And context windows have limits. So ideally, you don't want to give way too much to the large language model all at once. And a lot of these tips and tricks I'm going to talk more about as we are coding our application, but just want to get a couple of them in before we start. And the last thing I want to talk about before we start is just general thinking. So I can sit here and think for the next 5 minutes, come up with an entire plan for my application, come up with the entire architecture, where AI, the large language model, is really only predicting the next token. It's not predicting 5 minutes in advance. So if we ask the AI model to build an authentication system, it's going to actually start building that piece by piece. And because it didn't plan ahead, it might trap itself into a logical corner and end up giving you bad code. So you can actually solve these problems by coming up with the logic yourself, or if you're not sure exactly what to do, you can tell the AI model to give you an outline of a step-by-step process it can follow before writing any type of code. So this is going to use your tokens, but it's going to save you tokens in the long run. So let's move on to actually building our application. Well, sorta. First, you have to decide what type of software you're going to use. So there are websites like bolt.new, there is Loveable. You're going to notice a trend. They're all very similar in the sense that they have like this same UI. You type in whatever you want in the middle. So there's base 44 or cto.new. And these are just some of the more popular options that are available to you. You basically log in and then you can just type here, I want to build and this can be literally any type of web application you want, from a landing page, a personal blog, some internal tool that you might use for your company, whatever you want it to be. You can actually just use it straight from the web. And they also have access to different plugins, different tools that you can use. And we're going to cover GitHub in just a second because it's extremely important, but you're going to want to make sure that they have GitHub integration, and you'll understand that in just a minute. But you can say, okay, I can use any of these web-based ones, and they will all work really, really well. The other option is to use a desktop-based application, and the most popular desktop IDE, which is just a term for an editor where you can put all your code on, is VS Code. So you can actually see what VS Code looks like, and you can actually have agents that are built in that will help you code with VS Code. So this is VS Code, and this is what it looks like when you install it. You can click File, and you can actually open a folder, and that folder is going to contain where all of your code will go for your specific project. So create a folder maybe under your downloads, give it a name, whatever project you want to make, and then you can actually hit Open Folder. Now, if you notice, my VS Code has Claude Code installed, and I can click it, and now I can actually start using Claude to talk through and actually just talk to it using natural language to code whatever I want it to code. Now, how did I get Claude Code? Well, it's as simple as going to extensions down here, and you can actually just search up at the top, and you can just type in Claude, and it will pop up with Claude Code. You can click it, you can install it, and then it's going to ask you to link your Claude account, and it's going to use your tokens. Remember that word we talked about earlier? It's going to use your tokens when you're talking back and forth to Claude to build your application. And Claude Code is very good. And I'm going to only cover 3 different options, but there are a lot of different IDEs. There are a lot of different AI models that you can use to vibe code. The next option I want to talk about is from Google, and it's called Antigravity. They have a really fancy website, but you can see we can download it for Windows. And again, you can kind of see pricing. You can just link your Google account and you can just start using it. So if you notice, it looks very similar to VS Code because it literally is VS Code, but with Google's own spin on top. But when you log in and when you download this, it's going to ask you to log in with your Google account. You can notice on the right, so we can say, hey, do we want Gemini 3.1 Pro, Gemini 3 Flash? They even have Claude Sonnet, Claude Opus. You can see we have different options. And then also, we can also enable or disable plan mode. So we can say, hey, plan out everything ahead of time, really similar to, again, what I was talking about earlier on in this video. So you can say, hey, plan everything before you do anything. And again, you can just talk back and forth in the chat. Now, listen, I have no alliance to any of these models. I jump around from whatever the best is at the given time. With all that said, right now, my favorite is Codex, and that is by ChatGPT. And the reason why I like it so much is it's really good at coding, and as well as that their pricing is really favorable to the end user. You get a lot of tokens for your money. So regardless of which one you pick, the process is generally the same. You can enter an API key, which we're going to talk later on about in this video, or we can just continue with our login. So in this video, we're mostly going to use Codex for the desktop application we're building. So we're going to have like a backend through Python and a front end through the web. And I'm going to explain this in a lot more detail. Don't be worried if you don't understand what I'm talking about. We're going to go through it step by step. Now, Codex I like because it is very user-friendly, but regardless of which option you choose, whether using Antigravity, maybe using Claude Code, the process stays exactly the same. The skills you're going to learn going forward are transferable. Now, you're going to probably think, okay, Franklin, let's get coding. No, there's one other thing I want to show you, which is GitHub. And you might be wondering, why do we need GitHub? What is GitHub? So I have this website here called Thumbnails A, and you can create thumbnails for videos extremely easily in different creator styles. So on GitHub, I actually have my code for Thumbnails A that is posted in a repository. And a repository is just a big folder of a history of all your code. And you can actually see this is the latest version of my code for Thumbnails A. So I have a repository, a folder called Thumbnails A, and in it goes all of my code. Now, I can commit code, just basically transfer my code to GitHub, and it basically stores my code in a history bank. So I always have access to all different points in time for my code. So we can commit code to GitHub. We're basically uploading code to GitHub. So we have different reference points so we can always go back. And why is this important? Large language models will hallucinate. Large language models will mess up your code, and you might have a working version and you might want to say, hey, I want to restore back to an older version because it actually worked better then. In order to do this all easier, if you have a GitHub repository, that folder with all your code, and you're saving different points in history, you can always jump back. And I'm going to show you how to commit your code, how to upload it to a GitHub repository. Again, the process is very similar regardless of which way you go. So you can actually see here on March 26, 2026, I committed to my GitHub repository, and I have one GitHub commit here, and that is the name of what I did. And then on the right, we have this number here, FE2A414, and that number represents the point in history where the commit happened. So if your code gets messed up, you can always go back. You can say, hey, ChatGPT, can we go back to FE2A414? So it has the ability to jump back to that point in time. If you want to see, and if you understand code, you can also hit browse repository at this point. But really, the big thing is to commit your code, to save your code, to give it different checkpoints, so you can always go back in time. And again, it's just going to have a list going down. So the first thing you're going to want to do is go to github.com and create an account. And you might be asking, hey, is it safe to upload my code there? GitHub is maintained by Microsoft. They own it all, and it is the largest place in the world to put code on. A lot of large companies use GitHub as their standard for code repositories. And you cannot beat the cost because it's completely free. All right, so this is Codex, and you can see here, like I was saying earlier, it is a very simple app. It's very easy to use. We can see we have a chat, and on the left, we have different projects and threads within our project. So we're going to actually start by building our project now, and we're going to connect GitHub. We're going to connect a lot of the pieces that I was talking about earlier. I'm going to give you some tips and tricks on how to build and how to maximize your context window and get your application actually built and running. Again, it doesn't matter. You're using Claude Code, Antigravity. The steps are the same. In Antigravity and VS Code, you'd go to File, you can click Open Folder, and you can create a folder on a computer wherever you want your files to be. In Codex, we can actually hit this here, and this is the little folder, and it's going to open up a folder. We're going to select a folder, so the location on my computer where the file would be, or where the folder would be. So now we can see here, we don't have any chats under our folder. So here we can actually say, hey, this is what my project's about, and I want to make sure that we have a GitHub repository for our project, and I want to have it as a private repository. On GitHub, your repository can be private, where no one can access it, or you can make it public, where anyone can access it. And the whole concept of that is sharing is caring, and you're going to help other people, and you can build on top of their applications. But if you just want your application to be completely private, just mention you want a private repository. To make the process easier, on the top left, Codex has something called plugins, and you can actually see here, we can actually install the GitHub plugin. So it's going to have a better idea how to actually use GitHub with Codex. So we can actually install the GitHub plugin, and you can see now it's ready to go. And you can actually scroll through, and there are different plugins that you can install depending on what your end goal is. Maybe you want to use Cloudflare and you want to make a web application. Cloudflare is very good at reducing your traffic costs. So we can actually just click that and enable it. Maybe you want to build an iOS app. You can click this. It will help build, refine, and debug your iOS application. If you want to build a macOS app, well, you can do that. So you can actually see there are a lot of different options depending on what you want to build. There is even Supabase, which I will talk more about when we get to our web application. But you'll notice that we can integrate a lot of different things. So we can integrate Slack, or maybe we want to accept payment. We can actually enable Stripe. And all this is doing is making it easier for Codex to understand how to use these specific tools. So for now, the one I recommend is GitHub, because we definitely need that. You can also see we can try it in chat. So we have GitHub here, or we can type the @ symbol, and now we can actually type GitHub, and we can say, hey, let's create a private repository for our project. I have done exactly that. let's create a private repository for our project called File Sorter, and we can click send, and it's going to actually create the repository on our GitHub. We don't need to know anything else. It's just going to do it. If you are on Antigravity or Claude Code, there is something called MCP Servers. So you can use it that way, and you can actually see the number of MCP servers that we have access to. There are a lot of different ones. Again, we can click install. We can install the GitHub MCP server, and it will have access to that information. MCP servers are something that Claude actually came up with, and every other AI model has adopted the protocol. In short, and to simplify the whole thing down for you, basically it allows AI models to be fed a library of context, a library of information about different things. So GitHub, for example, how do we commit data? How do we create a repository? And it tells the AI model everything it needs to know, so it actually saves you money. It makes the entire process easier. So you're going to see here that it's been working for 1 minute and 32 seconds. It's saying it's going to use the GitHub plugin, and it's running commands for us. And if I scroll down, it says, hey, we need to make sure that we have ownership. So now I have some options, and I can say allow, or I can click the drop down, and I can say always allow. And you guys are always allowed to work with my GitHub, and be careful with what you allow and what you deny. Try to read it, try to understand it as best as you can. I know sometimes this might throw at you some like really coding based terms. My recommendation is to Google search if you're not sure, because there has been instances where Claude, ChatGPT, Gemini mass deleted stuff. Just be careful. That's my forewarning, but generally speaking, it's going to do a good job. You can actually see now on my GitHub profile, I actually have a repository called File Sorter, and this is the one that Codex just made for us. So it has a README that's blank because we don't have anything in our file sorter yet. So you can see this is what we have. And you can see here, Codex says, hey, we created our private repository, and it gives you all the details. It tells you our branch, and think of branches as different code bases. So our main branch is we're going to be the latest version of our code. Maybe we want to test a feature. We don't want to mess up the main code. We can create a brand new branch. We can tell Codex, hey, create a branch because we don't want to mess with what we have. It's working well. We just want to add this side feature. And if it works, then we can merge the branches. But Codex is pretty good. It'll figure it all out for you. So let's start working on our file sorter, and let's start with the easiest approach possible. We're going to start with just purely based off file extensions. So depending on what the file extension is for our application, it's going to move that file into a subfolder based off the file extension. So imagine like a JPG, PNG, those are images, can move it to a folder called photos. If it comes across an MP3, it'll move it into a folder called music. And remember how we're talking about context windows and tokens? So if we type in here now, it's going to actually use everything it did before. So we can actually just come up here and we can start a new chat. If you're in Antigravity, you could hit plus and that will start a new conversation. You can also view past conversations through here. Or if you're on Codex, you can actually view the conversations on the left under threads. Now I'm going to feed it a prompt, and because I am a programmer myself, I understand that the backend needs to be Python, so it has the ability to move files, but I want my front end to be a web-based application, so it has a nice GUI for whoever wants to use it. All right, timeout. We have Dana beside me, the real one, not the AI Dana. If you follow my channel, you subscribe, you know I often use AI Dana, the AI version of my wife, in my videos. But no, we have the real one here. She is watching me record and she's stopping me. She's saying, hey, what is this? What is that? So I make sure I'm covering all my bases. It's kind of hard. I've been programming for a long time and I just kind of use the words and I don't really think about it. So backend. That is where all the data processing is going to happen on our application. So in our circumstance where we have our file system, that is where it's going to actually use to move the files, to rename the files. That is a Python server that we're going to be making, and we're going to use, we are going to be making loosely. Codex is going to do all the work for us. And then the front end is what the user is going to actually see. When I say GUI, graphical user interface, that's what I'm talking about. That's the graphical user interface. That's the part you're going to see. That's where you're going to have all your features. You're going to see the output. You're going to see the logs. Everything like that is going to be on the front end. So think of back end where like processing happens. Front end is what you see. If you're not sure and you're like, hey, how do you know that? Or what can I do? Just ask any AI model, say, hey, this is what my application is. Can you brainstorm some advantages and disadvantages on different coding architectures that you should use, or I can use, to build my application. If you already know what you want, that's that whole like thinking 5 steps ahead. But at the same time, even that I'm thinking for the AI model, I'm still going to have it think as well, because it might fill in some gaps. It might come up with a plan that's going to help it make our vision come to life. So we're going to start off with this prompt here. Before we do anything, I showed you plan mode on Antigravity. Make sure you enable plan mode, especially when you're starting out. And also, you might want to go with like the highest possible when you're doing your plan. When it's actually coding, you can actually lower it down. You don't need like the highest level of reasoning, because it has the ability to follow the plan. As long as the plan is good, it can follow it. So I want you to just really take note about my prompt. So I want you to create a detailed plan on how to create an application that will move and sort files based off the file extension. So we just basically gave it a nice overview of what we want. If you notice too, I added like numbering system, so it knows exactly what we're looking for and made it very simple for the AI model. So the backend will be Python for moving and renaming files, because we need a backend server. Again, I know that. If not, just go talk to a large language model. You can ask it, or even within this application, while it's making the plan, you can say, okay, this is what I want. Give me the best options, or give me 5 options for the backend, give me 5 options for the front end, and then let me decide, or give me like the pros and cons. So you have that as an option. You have it here, the front end will be web-based, and then I go on to give a detail about how I want it to function. So the user will have an option to select which folder and click sort, and based off the file extension of the file, it will sort it in the folder of the user's choice. And you might be wondering, okay, how does it know where to sort it? Well, that's where I go on to number 4, add an option where the user can add a folder location and do a comma-separated file extension that matches that given file type. So now, technically, this is our entire prompt here. The AI model knows exactly what we want. There's one thing missing. And this is just a helpful trick to help you maintain that GitHub repository that we set up earlier on, to maintain a good context window so the AI model knows exactly what it's doing. Anytime you go back to start a new chat, it doesn't have to read through the entire code base, at least not as detailed, where you can save tokens. You have your code stored for future you, and it'll just make your life a lot easier. Basically, we're going to set up our project so we don't have to add documentation in the future. We don't have to worry about commits. I actually just have this like nice little paragraph here, and you can change the wording. You can always add this after the fact, but I like to do it in the beginning. Just makes the code a lot cleaner, a lot easier. It's not going to like add duplicate code, or not as much. So basically, we have this prompt here, add a documentation file that documents every file in the repository, every function, how it works in every feature. So basically, we're saying as you code Codex, or as we code Gemini, or as you code Claude, make sure you're documenting everything you're coding in a file called documentation. And then ensure the README reminds future AI models to follow and update the documentation to always keep it up to date. So we're saying, hey, it doesn't matter which AI you use in the future, always remind that AI model to update that documentation to always keep it up to date. So you might jump from one AI model to the next. You might want to jump from Codex today to Antigravity, or to Claude Code on VS Code. I jump around all the time. This allows me to jump around much easier because it maintains a nice context for the AI model. And then I followed it up as well, also keeping the README to remind the AI model to always keep GitHub up to date with every change to commit where it makes sense. So it's always going to commit your code to GitHub, so you don't have to worry about that either. Now we can hit send, and it's going to start working. And you're going to see here, it is going to start thinking. And again, if you notice, I put on the highest possible thinking, again, just because I want very good reasoning effort just to start our program. And you're going to notice our program right now is honestly kind of dumb. We're just using it purely based off file extensions. After we have this functioning and working, I want to show you how we can make this smarter using APIs and actually build in AI into our application, but we're going to get there. So it says, I'm grounding this in the current repo first. So the plan matches what exists. So it's going to say, hey, we're inspecting the workspace structure, current files, and it's going to find out very quickly that everything's just blank. And it actually says that. Here we go. It's empty, except for a minimal README. So it's going to actually start working, and it's going to start coming up with a full plan to make sure it all works, make sure it all happens. So Codex is going to actually ask us questions. How should this app run on the user's machine? Now, you can see here we have 3 options. We have localhost, which it tells you, hey, this is recommended. And if you don't know what it is, you can hover over the eye and it'll tell you exactly what it is. Localhost is basically going to be running locally on our computer only. So if you have a localhost URL and you made something really cool and you send it off to your friend, they're not going to be able to open it. We have a packaged desktop application, and you can see again what that looks like, or we have LAN or web app. So this will make it accessible for other people outside of your own network. So we can actually select that, and then it's going to lead us to the next question where we can pick our answer. And if we don't want to go back, we can always go back, and you can see what I have selected, but we can go forward, and it says, now, when the user clicks sort, which files should be processed? So we can say top level only, recursive folders, or the user toggles. So do we want only the top level where the folders are? So maybe we're looking at my downloads folder. Do we want all the files in my downloads folder? Or do we want all the folders within my downloads folder to be sorted as well? Or maybe we want it as a user toggle so the user can decide what they want. So I'm going to pick top level only. I mean, I could have put user decides just to give a little bit more power to the user, but let's just simplify it all down. And what should happen in the files that do not match a configuration extension rule? So we can leave in place, we can move to unsorted, or we can block sorting, or we can say, hey, option number 4, Codex, let's do this. So maybe we want to create a setting where unsorted files go with an option to leave them in place where they are. So the user will still have that option, will have that power, and now we can hit submit, and you can see here it's finalizing our plan. So it's going to go back and forth with us to make sure our application is exactly what we want. And it says, oh, wait. One behavior still changes in the background. It needs some more information. If a file is named report.pdf already exists in the destination folder, what should the sorter do? So do we want to auto rename? So do we want to add like a 1 in it? Do we want to skip? Or do we want to overwrite? So let's not overwrite. Let's not delete stuff. Let's do auto rename, because deleting is bad. We don't want to delete files. We don't want AI to delete files. That can turn out to become a problem. It might mass delete all the files in our folder. Let's not do that. So you can see here, we have a plan that is building, and it might ask us some more questions. You can actually see like a history of different commands it's running. You can see everything it's doing on your computer as it does it. I also want to point out for Codex and every other one you use, there is a limit. So if I hover over, you can actually see here, this is our context window. These are the number of tokens we use. So just for this little chat, we have already used 31,000 tokens of the 258,000 tokens for our context window for this specific chat. If we go over, Codex will compact it down, and then it will just keep allowing us to talk to it. But as I mentioned earlier, it might be better at that point to click here and start a new chat. So we now have a plan, and we can actually hit expand plan. And if we scroll down, you can actually see a summary. So it gives us a summary, a Windows first localhost application. It's going to be using React. So it figured out the library itself. A library is just what type of thing it's going to use on top of its coding language. React is JavaScript based, so it's web based, so it can run on the web. And it also has a Python backend. And you can actually see how it's going to work. We have the flow, so the user is going to select the folder, and it's going to be locked to top level files only. And you can actually see it talks about incoming file names. It has a setup. We can see the architecture. So it built all of this itself based off what we requested. It has backend endpoints. And you don't really have to understand any of this, but you can go through and you can try to read it. You can try to decipher it. It is mostly English. You can say, hey, I don't like that, or I do like this. Let's change this. So you can see here app config rules. So we have unmatched mode. So we have leave, move, and you can see that's basically 2 options for this task. So we can see the changes, we can see the front end, we can see the documentation where we have, hey, we need to expand the README with what we talked about earlier. It goes all the way through. It even says, hey, test this all out. We have front end test and assumptions and defaults. So it's going to make default options for us. Now it says, hey, do you want to implement this plan? And we can actually say, yes, let's implement this plan. And it's going to actually go through and start building our entire application for us. Now, while this is working, I want to talk a little bit more about Codex specifically, because if you're on VS Code or if you're using Antigravity, which is still VS Code, you're going to actually see all the code pop up. As it's coding it, you can see the implementation plan. It becomes its own little file. Where Codex, you don't really see any files. You see that it's working for a certain period of time, and if it ever, like, you think it gets stuck and you're going to see like this time going forever, you can click stop, and then you can say, hey, you got stuck. Can you hit continue, or can you try again? And it has the ability to do that. But in terms of code, you don't really see a lot of code on here. But if you go to File and we go to Settings, you can see here we can actually decide which application we're going to open our code up with. So we can actually open up our code from Codex in Antigravity, because this isn't really a code editor, it's just truly a vibe coding application. Under settings, you're going to notice some other things too, like appearance. We can do some configuration options. We can see personality. So do you want it to be warm and friendly? I just wanted to give me the answers. Like, that's really what I want it to do. We can see like usage and what our limits are. We can see MCP servers. So very similar to what I was talking about before, but they did make it a little bit easier. We have Git. So you can see Git is built right in because it's that important. And we have all sorts of different things. We even have archive chats. So, dear ChatGPT, I burned my computer in a fire. If you haven't seen that video, go check it out. If you want to open up your code in any of these things, you can click up here, and now we can click Antigravity, for example, and it'll open up an Antigravity or VS Code. In the top right, we also have GitHub actions that are built in. So you can see here, we can create a branch, we can create a PR, we can push, we can commit. I'll talk more about this shortly as soon as we actually start getting some of these tasks complete, when it makes more sense. And now you can see here, it is task-based. So we can actually hide the tasks if we don't want to see them, or we can expand it out. And you can see here, it's doing the first task, it's creating the project structure, the core backend, and then it's going to go through and do all these different tasks in order. It's been running for nearly 6 minutes. It's still working away. I can change the reasoning now. I can lower it down because it has a good plan that it's following. Again, you can change the model. Over here, there's an option for speed. I just flipped it to fast. So this is your default speed. It's just normal credit usage. We can make it 1.5 times faster, but it's going to use credits 2 times the time, but it's going to use credits 2 times more. So just our first prompt took 29 minutes and 52 seconds, and you can see it implemented a full localhost application. It goes through and tells you exactly what it did, and it has a whole verification pass. So you're probably wondering, okay, how do we actually access our program now? How do we access it on localhost? There are a couple of different ways of doing this. If you want it the easiest way possible, we can actually just type here, run this on localhost, and it will work. We can also click up here like I'm showing you, and we can open it up in Antigravity. And here is all of the files for our program. So it actually broke it all up into Backend, and you can see it here. We can see our documentation. So this is the entire guide of everything it's done. And then we can also see the front end, and you can see all the packages and stuff there. If you go to README, you're going to see a way of how to start this all up. So it actually tells you here if you want to start the back end, the front end, and how to do it all. So we have to run npm install. That's going to install all the packages that our program has. And then we can run dev, npm run dev, and that's going to have the front end run. So we have access to it. We would have to do this for our back end. Again, we don't have to do that. We can make this really simple and just go over here and just say, hey, run this on localhost, and it will do it. Now I want to talk about our code. So you can actually see in the top here, we have a side panel, and you can see these are unstaged changes. So these are things that have not been sent to our GitHub yet. They're like waiting to go. And we have stage changes, and there's nothing staged. We can see our branch. We can start seeing all of our code here. So you can toggle this panel on and off. We also have the ability now to commit to GitHub because it hasn't done it yet. So we can actually just do it ourselves if we want to play it safe. So we can hit commit, and we can say, hey, even include unstaged changes, and we can even leave a message, and we can also say commit and push. So the difference is commit is just going to prepare it to go to GitHub. Commit and push is going to actually send it off to GitHub. So we're going to hit continue, and you're going to see it's going to start committing. Also, by the way, our app is now running. So we can click this and it's going to open it. Now we can see our application sort desktop folders by extension without leaving the browser. So we can see like our mode, top level only. We can see conflicts, auto rename, and our runtime. And we can choose a source to sort. So you can see here, I have put in my downloads folder. And so now we have destination mapping. So we can actually see our destination folder. So we have a folder called photos under downloads. And now we can say, okay, any file that ends with .jpg or .png or .gif, for example, will always go into this folder. So that's our first rule. We can add another rule, and we can add another destination folder. So we can add as many rules as we want. And eventually it's going to go through all the different rules, sort our files accordingly. we have unmatched folders, or unmatched files rather, leave unmatched files exactly where they are, or move them to a catch-all folder. So we can have like an unsorted folder. So we can do that as well. I'm just going to leave unmatched files the way they are. And now we can say, okay, I want to save these rules. And the rules have been saved to a local config file. And let's actually test that. Let's hit refresh. And you can actually see here, we have all of oh, wait a second, it didn't actually save this here. So we can actually go back to Codex and we can just give it some more context about what we want. So we're basically just vibing back and forth. So when I go to save a folder, to sort it, it does not save. Ensure that all rules are saved to the local config file and it actually saves. So there's another trick I'm going to give you, which is to add in use console logs when possible. And I'll explain to you why this is important as soon as we're done rebuilding our application with these changes. And now I said, hey, redesign the app. The main page should have a visual list of all files of the folders that we're sorting in. Remove the banner at the top, cleaner, simpler. Allow a user to click a file and sort just it according to the rules that we set in place, or sort all. Add a place for logs and maintain a nice clean log of the last 200 actions it took, so all moves the files. So we want to make sure we can go back and we can say, hey, this is where the file went. So we're going to hit send and it's going to go through and date our application based off all our new vibes that we're looking for. Now, in the meantime, I want to come back to GitHub and show you if we actually hit refresh now, you can see all of our code has been submitted. We can see our README, we can see the architecture, core features, we can see everything. It says, hey, here's our documentation, AI maintenance rules, so it tells the AI models exactly what it should be doing, and we can actually go through and see all of our code, and you can actually see the two different commits that we have, because we have the first one, our initial commit, and now we have the first one that we did with our baseline of our code. So we're starting to build our repository, we're starting to build the history of all our code, so we can always go back in time whenever we need it. This time around, it only took 11 minutes and 42 seconds, and it said it made all the different changes that we have requested, and it says the app is still running here, and it's verified everything. It should work. So let's go check it out. So we can go to our application here. We are going to hit refresh so it works, and you can see it actually looks a little bit different now. So we have our settings, which loads here, and we can clean this up. We'll make it look a little nicer towards the end maybe, but we can see here we have our top level files. It doesn't really show anything yet. We can see our last 200 actions. Again, we haven't done anything. Let's browse for a folder. So we're going to use our download folder, and instantly you can see different files I have inside of our downloads folder. So we can actually see, we can click a file and we can hit sort, and it will actually start sorting that individual file, and it instantly moved it. You can see it on the right. There is also the sort all button, and if we go to settings, let's see here, we have our fallback behavior, leave it unmatched, and I think this time around, it will actually save. Let's see if it did the console log. So if you right click on your browser and you hit inspect, there is a console here, and let me actually just put it the default for you so you understand what it'll look like on yours. I think Chrome starts off like this. You can just click the dots and we can bring it down to the bottom. That's how I like it. We can go to console and now you can actually see what it's done. So this is an object. You can open it up and you can open this up. You can see what it's doing as it does it. So it's making requests and it's actually going to move the file. So you can see the source path. You can see the file that it's moving. You can see everything it's going to do. If your program has an error and you have it as a console log, you can actually see the console. You can say, okay, the error is in red because it will be in red. And you can copy the error, just literally highlight it, copy it, go back to Codex, paste in the error, and you don't have to do anything. It'll figure it out on its own. So we can actually see the action. It's been moved, and that's pretty good. We can refresh, and it actually saves our data now. So it says save settings were loaded, and we can refresh the file. So we can say, okay, refresh these files. There's 254 files in my download. Let's hit sort all and let's watch it happen. Okay, that was really quick. 137 were removed. We have 117 left. So now we have a fancy little application that can literally move files based off file types. So we can add a rule, for example, and let's hit browse. So maybe we have a folder like audio, so we can do .mp3 or maybe .wave, and we now have that part of the bunch. And we can hit save again. We're going to go back to our files, and again, we're going to hit sort, and 28 more were moved. And you can see it actually does work because this is in my downloads folder with the photos folder, and it literally moved all of our files accordingly. It moved all the image files. So it does work, and our application is pretty lightweight and it's pretty cool. So as you can see, creating an application like this, we made a backend with Python to move files. We created a front end to design it all to make it look nice. Now let's add some AI intelligence built in. And when we talk about AI, I'm talking about using a large language model to read a PDF, for example. It's going to figure figure out what's on the PDF, and then I want it to rename the PDF based off whatever's on the PDF. So we're going to add a AI intelligence layer to our application, and I'm going to talk to you about APIs and how that all works. So in simple terms, an API will allow us to get a large language model like ChatGPT or Gemini or Claude or whatever you want, and actually integrate it into our application. So I want to talk about APIs and where to get them, but before we do that, I want to start my next prompt into Codex so it can actually start working in the background. So I am going to click here. I'm going to start a new chat within our file sorter. That way we are starting with a new context window just to keep it clean. And I'm going to bump this back up from medium to extra high because I want to make a good plan to ensure this all happens and happens well. We're also going to hit the plus and we're going to go back to plan mode, even though I have it at the bottom of my prompt. You'll see in a second, but we are going to add in some AI features now. So it's going to read PDFs and it's going to rename them. So I want to now have it so PDFs have their own special setting. They will have a dedicated folder where they go once they're renamed. So just like before, I gave a nice little overview of what I'm looking for, what I want Codex to do for me. And I now go into like 1, 2, 3, 4, so on and so forth, and I give it exact ideas of what I'm looking for. So we are starting with 1, we're going to add a setting where the PDF goes once it's renamed. So we're going to have a setting, PDF gets renamed, this is where it's going to be moved. We are going to be able to add special category types. So think of it like names, like invoices, delivery, credit cards, contracts, other. The user should be able to add and rename accordingly. So every single time we want to basically have a category for our PDF, and this will make more sense in a second as we go down. We're going to add types under each category. So a type will consist of a title. So imagine like credit card, invoice, a description of knowing what it is or what it looks like, and an exact sample of what it should be renamed as for formatting. So imagine you have a business. You can actually now create a little tool that's going to take the PDF, read the content of the PDF, figure out the type of the PDF that it is, and based off the type, it's going to rename it in a specific way. So that's what I'm saying. Renamed specific formatting, it can do that. So think like last card for, maybe we have an E number, a date, an amount. So and that's basically what it's going to look like when we rename the file. So we say, hey, these variables will be pulled from the PDF. Each type will have different variables. We need to ensure the user can set them. So we're basically laying the groundwork of what we're looking for. So we're looking for like a way for the AI to understand what we're looking for, to understand how it's going to rename the file. We move on and we say, hey, we will be using Gemini. That's the AI model I'm going to choose. And there's a couple of reasons for that. I'll get to it when we talk about the API. And then I say, hey, send the description, the PDF itself. So we want just the description. We want the PDF as well. And it needs to figure out the category and type of the PDF. So as I was saying earlier, we can add categories, we can add types, and depending on the type, it's going to rename accordingly. So it's going to extract the data from the PDF and rename it on the exact formula. Now, we are going to say, hey, for the API key, we're going to allow the user to put that through settings and have them save it. Also allow them to type in the Gemini model they want to use. So if you want to have a specific Gemini model, you can do that. You don't even have to allow the user to save an API key. You can have it in the background. Again, I'm going to show you how this API key thing works. Don't be overwhelmed just yet. We're getting there. And I said, set the default to Gemini 3 Flash. That's the one I want as my default. It's a pretty strong model for the price. And now we have number 6 on the list of files where we have a sort a file. Ideally, we can add an extra dropdown for PDF types, and we can select the exact file type for renaming it if we want to manually decide. So we have given it exact step-by-step instructions as to what we want. We started a whole new context window. We're doing like all the little things to make Codex work better for us without burning through tokens as fast, while making it smarter to understand exactly what we want. We gave that step by step. We enabled plan mode. We have it on extra high. So it's going to make a very good detailed plan. I even said here, make a detailed plan, right? So we're just giving it that encouragement and ensure you update documentation when you make the changes. And again, spelling is important, so we're not burning extra tokens. And now we're going to hit send. It's going to work on the plan in the background. And while it's doing that, let me talk to you about APIs and how to get them. So we can go to Claude's website and they have an entire Claude API portal. It's platform.claude.com. Very similar. There's OpenAI. So we're going to log in. If you're on ChatGPT, again, you can click here. You can give it a name. You can click a project. And then you can hit create key, and you're going to get an API key that you can like just copy over. It looks like this. And for those who are trying to use my key, I just revoked it. No key for you. Now, in my opinion, the easiest way to get an API key is through Google. Go to aistudio.google.com. On the left, when you're signed in, you can actually hit get API key. So we can actually click get API key. Then it says, hey, give your key a name so you remember. We can choose a project we want to use it with, and we can hit create key, and that's going to give us our key that we're going to use for Gemini. But just like before, we're going to delete this key. There are a lot of different options for API keys. One of the ones I like is called Open Router. And the reason why is it's like a unified interface for all large language models. So if you fill up your credits here, you get access to like a ton of different large language models all in one place. And if you go to models, you can see here, you can see all the different models that you have access to. There's like literally thousands of them. And what's really cool here is we can go by sorting, and we can go pricing low to high, and you can actually see we have access to models that are completely free. So you can see $0 for input, $0 for output tokens. You can try some models completely free and actually integrate them into your application without spending a penny. But depending on your application, obviously the quality of those models might not be as good as the state-of-the-art models like ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude. So we're back on Codex here, just asking some questions as usual. It's making sure we're getting everything it needs from us. So it says, how should we save the key? So mask after saved recommended. We can show the whole key session only. We're going to mask after saved. We don't want to share the key. And what's really cool as well with all of these, you can have like multiple of these running at once. So I can actually just start a new chat, and then I can say, hey, I want to work on the whole entire UI and let's make it better. And we can go back and forth between two different chats that are working on the same thing. But just for the sake of this one, I'm going to leave one running. We don't need to do multiple, but you can see here, I'm just going to kind of let it run. It's going to make the entire plan, and I'll be back when it's done. This time around, it worked for 4 minutes and 49 seconds. It asked a couple of questions. We can expand it. Just like before, you can see like the summary. It's keeping the document changes in scope. So it's updating the README, the repository guide. It's making sure that we have a centralized database with MD README files that it's going to like always resort to. So if you notice, this one didn't think it long because we also added in these little things that we added in prior to just make the entire thing a little easier. So we can actually go through, we can see all of our changes that we're like looking at, and we have an entire dedicated backend PDF service that it's going to work with the official Gemini Files API. So it's going to upload the file, and it's going to keep non-PDF sort behavior unchanged. Now we have more than just a file sorter based off file extensions. It's becoming smart with Gemini. So we can actually scroll all the way down. You can see like it even has a plan to test like just generic rules. And I'm going to upload some files, and we're going to like put this through the test. But you can see we even have like some defaults, and we can say, okay, let's implement this plan. So it's going to go through, and just like before, let me just like change it back down to like medium or high. And we can again go here, and we can go to speed, and we're going to keep it on fast because I have tokens to burn. I'm fine with that. Let's get it going, and I'll be back when it's done. Codex is completely done. You can see here we've implemented the PDF AI workflow end to end, and the backend now has a dedicated PDF branch, and you can see everything that it has done. We can see all the different files that it's changed. It's updated the README, so we can actually click the drop down. The red is like before, the green is after. So you can actually see the changes. So this is what it was before, and it stopped here, your sentence, and now it just keeps going, and it talks about like the new PDF aspects that we've added. And you can go through and you can see all the different files that it has changed. Now on our file sorter itself, if we refresh, you can see if we go to settings, we have some new settings for our AI rename settings for our PDF workflow. So we need to add in our Gemini API key, which we're going to put here. And if we scroll down, you're going to see I have added a type, and under my type, I have added something called gas receipt. My category name is credit cards. So we have like an entire template of how to work, and then we have a description for it, and we have added 4 different variables. It works pretty well. We can add a variable. You can see it down here. We can just put in whatever variable it is, and we can put a description of what it should be looking for. And now we have our entire type here called gas receipts. And if we want to add another type, we can add an entire new type, and again, add variables to the type. So we can just kind of expand our PDF renamer based off all our different types of PDFs. So now if we go to files and let's just change where we're looking. This time around, I have a folder called test with specific PDFs. So we can see all three of them are unmatched and we cannot actually click sort. It does not let us. So there is an error. So let's right click and it says no matching extension rule. That might be why, but let's hit right click and we're going to go to console and you can see we have this error here. So like I told you, we can copy this. We can come back to Codex and we can paste the error in. Also, I told it I get no matching extension of PDFs, even though it should use my fancy PDF renamer when I click sort all or sort selected. So we can hit send. Codex is going to go through and fix the errors. So if you notice, using the console log is extremely powerful when you're using a web application. And just for your own knowledge, if you're using like a Python application or something that's on your computer and you go to terminal, you can actually see we have the ability to view a debug console, or within the terminal, you can have your code say, hey, can you print out data? So maybe you have like a nice graphical user interface. You can tell the model, say, hey, always print what you're doing into the console, into the terminal, so we know exactly what's going on. We're going to do one other thing. So you can see I have my 3 files here. I've actually just opened up this one, and this is our gas receipt that we have. And it's not a real gas receipt, but nonetheless, it looks real. It's real enough. We're going to test with it. So let's go back to code. And this time around, I'm going to actually hit the plus, and I'm going to add a file. Oh, wait, hold on a second. Yeah, you can test that. I'm going to go plus, I'm going to add a file. So I have a prompt now, and I said, hey, based on this PDF, I want to update my settings config. So the file gets renamed like, and I give it exactly what I want it to be renamed like. I told the description, and I said, hey, can you, like, it's going to add all the variables and everything we need. But then I also said, hey, put this under the category called credit cards, and the type is gas receipt. Add this like any other, so I can always edit it. So it will have the ability to update our config file accordingly. So we have an updated version of our app. If we go to settings and if we scroll down, you can now see the Gemini API key is already saved locally because it's hidden. We have our category called credit card. We have gas receipt. We have the exact way it's going to be renamed. We have a description and we have our variables that we have added. So we can always go back now and add additional types, variables. It should all work. Now, if we go to files, and I have refreshed it, it's all functional now. We can see our like last actions. It's really cool. So we have our 3 files here and we can actually test it now to see if it works. So we can pick one individual and we can hit auto detect, or we can say, hey, this is under credit card. It's going to be a gas receipt. Auto detect, it should work because there's only one type for now. We're going to hit sort file and we're going to see what happens. Dear Codex, Gemini support is not installed. Reinstall backend dependency to add Google Gen AI. Please ensure Gemini is actually functional, and we can hit send. Codex came back. It says it's installed now. Let's try it again. Rename, auto detect, and we can hit sort file. Is it going to work? It's doing something. It's taking a little longer, and maybe it's going to Gemini right now as we speak. Boom. The provided document is a packing slip, which does not match a gas type receipt. Oh, wait a second. Maybe that's because I picked the wrong file. So maybe it does work. Let's try this one here. Let's sort the one that it should actually be able to sort, which is the SKM file. And we're going to see here in just a second, it's like working. Oh, wait a second. It did it. It totally sorted the file. Our test folder is down a file now. And under my downloads folder, here it is, with the proper naming based off the file from the PDF. And after a little bit of back and forth, as you can see, the console log just going back and forth with it, we now have a file sorting system that we can actually add variables to. We can create different PDF types, but then also we can go back and we can say, hey, I want to sort all my images as well, and I want to sort all my music and all my videos. You can even have Gemini look at photos and sort them into subfolders depending on whatever they are. I'm not going to spend the entire video on this one application, but I do want to show you that I'm going to like keep adding prompts. So I'm going to say, hey, for variables, I want this. I want to update settings. So I'm telling it, hey, use a sidebar with collapse and expands. And the angle is a very clean application. And within that sidebar, move the history. On the main page, we want a preview. So we individually select the PDF, it'll show it. So things like that, you can see Codex is again working and it's like kind of going through, and you can actually see it has the ability to search the web to figure out pricing, because part of my thing was to add a cost, like a total cost tab to see how much we spent. So you can actually see it is now figuring out the pricing for Gemini, which is kind of cool. So Codex and Claude and all of them, all the state-of-the-art models, all the different vibe coding ones I've talked about in this video, have the ability to search the web. So you can always say, hey, search the web, or if you're like ambiguous like I was, it has the ability to go figure it out and do that for you. At this point, you have a pretty good understanding how you can use AI to make your own program just by vibe coding back and forth. Now, I want to go more in depth about Codex, Claude Code, and Gemini using Antigravity. Again, check out the chapters down below if you want to jump to the tool that you're interested in, or just continue watching. You can learn about all three. So as I showed you before, this is what Codex looks like, and we are talking back and forth. Definitely check out the plugins that exist because you can actually add them so Codex has an understanding and it understands what it can do with these different tools. So let's say you want to build a web application, you want to host it somewhere. Netlify and Vercel are two great options. And again, it's just so simple as clicking the plus, installing the plugin, connecting it with your account, and now you can just like quickly build and deploy applications right to the web. So say you want to include payments, you can just literally click Stripe, and now your Codex will have the ability to understand everything about payments and best practices and being able to use the API, which is just a fancy way of saying, hey, here's how you're going to code to integrate Stripe into your application. So there are a lot of different plugins that you can just like quickly add and use right into your application just by coming here and hitting the plus. The next one I'm going to show you is if you hit the slash, you're going to get a bunch of different options. So we can do code review, so it's going to review our code. We can turn on fast, so it's going to speed up the entire process while you're using Codex. You can do feedback. You can see MCP server status. So MCPs are things you can integrate in, so your Codex, again, has more information, more background, more knowledge. You can select your model, work trees. You can even say, okay, here is your personality. It's kind of similar to what I was showing you in the settings prior. Let me just come back. And then we can also turn on plan mode. You can choose the reasoning. And then here are all the different skills that you have access to. So you can say, I want to build my own MCP server on Cloudflare, or I want to find like a fix, or I want to inspect on GitHub. So you can see what you have access to, and you have access to a lot of different skills. Now, under File, Settings, you have also options. So you can say, hey, I want to open up an Antigravity by default, because Codex isn't a code editor. It's literally just to vibe code back and forth. You can see, you can set your languages. You can set all sorts of different information for your application. So you can even say, okay, I want to be notified when it is done. You can go through, you can adjust your appearance, you can do different configurations. So you can say, okay, I want it to always work on request, or only when it fails, or when something's untrusted, or maybe we want sandbox settings, and we can say, okay, you have full access to do as you please. Again, be careful with these settings, especially when you're starting out. In the top right, you can see here, we can actually click to open our code with our IDE that we set up, in this case, Antigravity. So if we want to see our file sorter code, we can actually just click this button here, and that is going to instantly open it up into Antigravity, which is like VS Code. And we're going to talk about Antigravity next, but you can actually see here, it will now open up the entire thing with our IDE. So we can actually see all the code that we have made. So you can see our files, backend, docs, front end. We can see the README that exists. We have access to everything. And like I showed you before, we can commit in the top right. We can toggle the terminal, which comes up down below. You can see exactly what's going on. And we can also toggle a side panel. And this side panel will show you things like code, and it might show you the website that you're working on, changes that you haven't pushed through to GitHub yet. So it gives you access to all sorts of information. Now, I will tell you, Codex gets a lot of updates, especially on the Mac version. So in the top left, you're going to have like this restart to update. Definitely click it because you get access to the latest and greatest that's happening on Codex. Now, Antigravity. Antigravity.google is the domain you can go to, and you get this fancy little page here that follows your mouse. Experience liftoff from the next gen agent platform. And you can see we can download it for Windows, you can download it for Mac. There's a lot of different options. You can download it. If you scroll down, it tells you more about it. It's their agentic developer platform. This is using Google and Gemini. You can see what it looks like here, and whether you open this up for the first time, you have a brand new project, it doesn't matter. Everything you want to do happens on the right. You can click the model you want, so you can see we have access to like Gemini 3.1 Pro, 3.1 Pro Low, Flash. We also get access to Claude Sonnet and Claude Opus, as well as the open source GPT model. We can click plan, or you can hit the plus and we can say plan. We can also say workflows. So if we hit this slash, there might be workflows and we'd have to add them, but we can actually add workflows as well. So this one works very similar to Codex that I showed you throughout this video, just there are some other options that you can use with this. So in the top right, we can click here, and now we can hit customize, and here we can add like different rules, and here is where we can add workflows. So imagine a workflow like a prompt that you're going to save, and you can just quickly trigger that. So say we want a global workflow, we can say, okay, let's call this the GitHub update workflow, and we can hit enter, and now we can describe what we want the agent to do. So even something simple like please commit and push the latest code to GitHub, please name the commits so that makes sense. Now we can actually save this, and we can hit save, Control S, and if we go back to our agent, now, when we hit slash, you can actually see we can send through GitHub update, so it's going to do this each and every time. Also, on the bottom right, we have anti-gravity settings, and here you can make all sorts of different adjustments. So we can say, okay, we want the agent to always proceed or request a review. We can say, okay, what's the review policy? We can do customizations like I was showing you. We can see everything we have access to, and then we can even say, okay, what kind of advanced settings do we have? So we can have like security. Do we want strict mode, or do we want to like review stuff that the agent is doing? You can see agent non-workspace file access. So do you want to allow the agent to see files outside of the workspace or not? So you can even limit it to just the folders you have open. You can see you have access to a lot of different settings just here. If we go down, you can see like different models. You can see credits available, and you can see when it refreshes, and you do get credits completely free just through your Google account. We have customizations. Again, you can see what we have access to. So these are MCP servers, and it's very similar to plugins where they will add functionality. So if you want to use Firebase, for example, and you want to have like a database and you want to publish this online, you can just use Firebase. You can add it and it will understand everything you need to know about Firebase. So Firebase is actually made by Google. It's just a easy, quick way to host your website with a database backend. We can keep scrolling down and you can see the number of different options you have. And these are just the MCP servers that are built in. You can always add your own. And of course, I do recommend for you to get the GitHub one if you are using Antigravity. If you're using like payments, again, we have Stripe. So you notice there's a lot of overlap. Maybe you want to use Notion, or maybe you want to use like PayPal or Supabase. See, you'll notice a lot of the same popular ones come up over and over again, but you can see how easy and quick it is to add any of these to your application. The last thing I want to show you about Antigravity, in the top right, we have something called Open Agent Manager. We can click that, or there is a shortcut, and you're going to notice very quickly, this looks very similar to Codex. So if you prefer that format, you can do the same on Antigravity. And don't forget, you can also click the @ and you can mention conversations, you can mention rules, you can hit the plus, and you can also upload different files and media. So your agent has a better picture, a better idea of what you're trying to accomplish. Up next, we have Claude.ai, and you can see we have code with Claude anywhere. So we have some options. So we can do it in the terminal. And if you want to install it, here's your installation. You just copy this, open up a terminal, just open up your start menu, type terminal, paste that in. You can have Claude Code installed. You can also do like an IDE extension. So if you want to install it for VS Code, like I showed you prior, you can click that, or you can even do it in the web. So you can just click Claude Code and you can do it right online. The easiest way to install Claude Code, download VS Code. So just literally search up VS Code. It looks like this, and now you can download it and install it onto your operating system. When you open up VS Code, you have it all installed. It's going to look something like this. On the left, we have some different icons. You're going to want to click extensions and just search Claude. You're going to see Claude Code for VS Code. You can click it. You can install it. Once you have it installed, if you come back to your main page, you're going to want to click File, open a folder on your computer, that's where your project is going to be stored. So in this case, I have a folder open called the guessing game. You can actually see it here. You can see a list of all the files and folders that will appear on the left side. And if I double click anywhere and I create a file, you're going to see a little tab system. And what's really nice is now, because I have the Claude Code extension installed, I can actually just click this, and that is going to open up a window with Claude. I can also open up the terminal, terminal, new terminal, and I can also just type in Claude. And you can see here, now we have access to Claude, and it's going to say, hey, do you want to trust this folder? And that is more or less the basic way to get Claude installed on your system. Say you have a project that's existing or a brand new project, either way, at the bottom, you can type /init. And what this is going to do, it's going to initialize your project. It is going to create a Claude MD file. So you know how earlier on Codex, I said to create an entire file that's basically keeping track of the entire documentation with all the architecture of everything that's going on? Well, Claude has that built in using the Claude MD file, which is going to build architecture and rules based off your existing project. And that is just one of many ways you can actually use Claude. So if you just type the / command, you're going to see all these things pop up where you can see they are organized. So we can do different conversation-based things. We can see manage content. So if we want to add a file, we have a ton of different settings. So you can see general config for VS Code, but then also you can say, okay, MCP servers, we can select different models, change the output styles, we can configure agents and hooks, we can edit the memory, we can manage MCP servers. There are so many different things, but it's the / commands that I find really interesting. So if you want to do compact, you're basically going to take your conversation history. It's going to make a summary of all the context and then kind of start the chat over so you're not burning through tokens as fast. You can also use /context, which is going to give you basically a visual of all the context that you're using currently. You can even use /cost to see how much money you're spending in your current session. Another important one is /security review. So Claude has the ability to do an entire review of your current code that's pending changes on your branch, and all these words will make more sense when we get to GitHub, but it can do all these really fancy things. And then we have /to-do. So if you notice when I was talking to Codex, I did a lot of 1, you're going to do this, 2, you're going to do that, 3, you're going to do this, because those are to-do lists and it's much easier for the AI models to understand and follow. So if you're on the terminal version of Claude, kind of like I was showing before, go to the top terminal, new terminal, type in Claude, you're going to get some extras. So you can see here, we have something called agents where we can configure agents and add them. And basically the way to understand agents is each agent is going to be delegated a task. So you can actually put in an agent. The agent's going to have its own context window. It's going to have its own custom prompt and specific tools that it can access. So you can see the agents that are already built in here, but we can actually just hit enter and we can make a new agent for our project or just for our own personal use. So we can say, I want to generate with Claude, or we can say manual configuration, and we can enter whatever we want. So maybe this is our code review agent. And then we can say, you will review all the code and ensure it's optimized and clean. There's no duplicate functions. And we can say, okay, when will Claude actually use this agent? So after it writes code, and you can see now it has access to all these different tools. And again, I pick manual. If you do automatic, it is a little bit easier. And you can see we can select even which model we want to use. So you can also pick a color for it. So we can say code review is now red. And now we have our agent that is all just sitting here. And if you notice, we have a folder that was made for us called Claude and agents. And now we have a code review agent that we have access to, which is here. So agents are extremely powerful because the different agents you can add one for let's say GitHub, and you want to make sure your GitHub is always up to date. You can add an agent to do that. So here are some of the different agents you can actually use that are extremely helpful and functional. So imagine a backend specialist agent. That one is going to help with your database and your server architecture. So this is going to be basically where all your data is stored. That agent's going to be responsible for that. And then on the other side, we can have a front end specialist is going to be responsible for the user interface, optimizations, and a responsive design. And when I say responsive design, do you want it to work on different device sizes? We can have a DevOps engineer, and that one's going to make sure that your infrastructure is all right and makes sense. Of course, we need a security engineer, which is going to make sure your entire code base is secure and there's no glaring vulnerabilities. We can have an engineering manager, which is going to perform optimizations, a software architect to do system design, technical standards, a quality assistance engineer, which can just test your program to make make sure it actually works. A product owner, which will make sure that like there's like the proper features that the user wants, and it's going to like say, hey, the stakeholders really want this information, let's make sure we include it. We can have a project manager, which is going to like plan the entire project out. A full stack engineer, which could like implement the complex features into your program. And lastly, don't overlook this one, a technical writer. So someone to make that documentation so the AI can actually understand what's going on when it's reading the code in the future. And honestly, for any of these, just kind of go through the list I just gave you, kind of replay it back, and you can just ask any AI model saying, hey, I want to do a technical writer. Can you give me a little prompt that I can throw in to Claude for this agent? Going back, if we type / again, if we scroll down, you can see some more options that aren't under the VS Code Claude plugin version. So, for example, we have Doctor, which is going to diagnose your Claude Code installation and settings to make sure it's all right and working. One of the important ones, if you're not using GitHub for whatever reason, can't say I didn't stress it enough in this video, but there is rewind. So you can go back to any point within your conversation. It's going to make checkpoints for you along the way. You can always just return back. It doesn't matter if you're using Codex with ChatGPT or Claude Code on VS Code or Antigravity with Gemini. Either way, you're going to see a lot of overlap with skills or MCP servers and all these built-in tools, and you're going to utilize all of them on all the different platforms. Now, before I get to the whole web aspect, I want to talk about just general tips and tricks when it comes to prompting, because it doesn't matter whether you're doing like a desktop application like any of the three I've been talking about, or any of the web ones that I'm going to be showing you shortly in this video. When you're prompting, there's like a 3-layer system you want to follow. So provide the technical context of what you want your application to do, the functional requirements, like what's going to happen, and then the aesthetic vibe, like the feel. If you cover all three in your initial request, the AI model will have a better idea of what you're asking. Also, try to always use the plan before code strategy. You want to force the AI model to make a documentation of what it's going to do. If you want to be specific, ask for a product requirement documentation, PRD, and an entire step-by-step implementation plan before it even starts writing any code. Now, if you want to save tokens, you can even use the highest tier model to create your step-by-step plan and then just turn it down a notch for when it's actually coding. Because the models are good at coding, it's just that initial plan that needs to be like the highest tier model. And then you can run like a what could go wrong prompt. So after you finish generating a feature, ask AI, can you review the code for me and check for security flaws? Can you check bottlenecks, edge cases, speed? How can we improve what I just added? You're going to get errors a lot, and I'm going to cover more error fixing when we get into the web-based stuff as well, but don't be afraid. Ask AI to explain to you what the problem is and how to fix the problem. So a good example of this is when you ask any AI model to use Gemini API to include Gemini into your application, it likes to put Gemini 1.5, which is depreciated. It no longer exists. So honestly, the AI model will go back and forth trying to figure it out. Then it's going to say, oh, we're going to put Gemini 2. That also doesn't exist. So if you ask the model and you ask any of these models saying, hey, what is the problem? Can you explain it to me? It's going to tell you, hey, this Gemini model doesn't exist. This is the model we should try. And you can just go back and say, no, here's the actual model you can try. So you can actually save a lot of tokens by just talking to your model even about errors. You'd be amazed, even as a beginner, you'd probably pick up a lot and be able to solve a lot just by understanding where it's going wrong. Now, this is an important one. Build one feature at a time. Don't go crazy. Don't have it build all sorts of stuff. Just one feature at a time. Fix that feature. Polish that feature, get it working, then move on to your next one. And don't be afraid to restart your sessions frequently. That entire context window that fills up, well, that is going to confuse your model. Once a feature is working, once you have it done, start a new context window, start a new chat. And then we talked about it prior, make sure you're using those built-in tools, built-in MCP servers, and built-in configuration files like Claude. Or if it doesn't exist, have the AI model build your own documentation. Do not be afraid with your prompts to add screenshots. So if you take a screenshot and you say, hey, I have this button, it doesn't work, you can actually take a screenshot, put it in Claude, ChatGPT, Gemini will know exactly what you're talking about. Or you can say, hey, I have this menu, can you change the colors of it? By putting in a screenshot, it gives it more direction, more information of what it's looking for. If you're a little bit more advanced, you can actually search through the code, give it a little snippet of the code where it should look. It's going to save a lot of time and tokens when you're vibe coding. Now, there's one last one I didn't really talk about, and that is the ability to talk to multiple of these chats in one go. So we can say, hey, like, give me a summary of my app, and then I can click up here and I can start a new chat, and then I can say something completely different. Like, is the README up to date? And you can see we now have 2 of them going on the left, and we can jump back and forth between 2 different chats going at the same time. And with most of these vibe coding platforms, you can actually send through multiple things in one go. So you can see it is still working on is the README up to date? We can click and we can say, hey, can you check the documentation next? And it just kind of sends it through. So we can say, like, update the documentation, and you can see it just kind of just work on them in queue. Depending on your confidence level and what you're working on, you can actually have these agents work on different parts of your application at the same time, or you can just keep sending different items into queue, and you can have Codex, Claude, Gemini continue working on it till you get what you're looking for. All right, let's talk more about GitHub, because it is extremely important, valuable, and completely free. If you go to Google and search in GitHub Desktop, you're going to come to a page, desktop.github.com/download, and you're going to see a page that looks like this where you can download it. And once you download it, you're going to get a nice UI, user interface, graphical user interface, that looks like this. And you can see I have my repository already imported in, but I can actually hit File, and I can hit Clone Repository, and if I'm signed in with my GitHub account, you can actually see all of your projects that you have made through any of your vibe coding. We can also hit Add Local Repository, which is going to allow us to browse through a computer, select a folder, and then we can actually send it off to GitHub itself, or we can start an entire new repository. Now, there are a couple of words, and I might have used them throughout this video. Keep in mind, I am an actual programmer. We can commit and push to GitHub. So I'm going to show you what this actually looks like in practice. So the version I have on my computer here is a little old and outdated, and this is for the Franklin website. You can actually see in the left, we have some changes. So this one here, we have changed the assets file for Pocket Data. So just a little game I have on my website. We can actually create a commit. So we can give it a name and we can say, okay, we created Pocket Datas on our website. And basically, that's just going to give it a title so we can always remember what we did for this individual commit, what we did for this individual code change on our application. And then we can actually say, hey, we want to commit this to main. When you do that, you're going to have a list of different commits, and each commit isn't live on GitHub yet. That's where we have to push to GitHub. So commit is all your little code changes. You're going to give them a title and possibly a description, and this just kind of sit there on your computer. And it's going to say, okay, we changed this file on this commit, we changed these files on this commit, and it's just a history of all your commits. When you're ready, you can push it all to your GitHub to keep your GitHub up to date. So you can see here, because my version is outdated, I have to pull from GitHub into my computer all 124 commits that I've made to my website since I've worked on it on this machine. So if I hit pull, you're going to see all of my data come in, because GitHub is our central database or central repository where all our code goes. So think of commit as just like an update, a series of updates of all the different files that we've changed. And then if we want to push it, we're pushing it to GitHub, but then we can also pull it from GitHub to update our computer. Hopefully that all makes sense. And then we can also say we want to fetch origin. And again, if we like say, hey, we want to commit this to main, we can do that, and you're going to see that this little file here will be able to be pulled from any of my other devices. We also have history here, and on history, you can see a list of all different things that I have been working on. These are what I've been doing about 17 days ago. I have a newer version. Again, I have to just push it to GitHub so I can pull it on this version of my computer. And you're going to notice on the right, you can see all the different file changes for this individual commit that was pushed to GitHub. And you can see all the different file changes. Red is removed, green is added. You can kind of get the idea of what we're working with. Now on GitHub itself, you can actually see here is my code. We have different branches, and AI might ask you, hey, which branch do you want to push your code to? And right now I have my main branch, and that's where all my main code is. That's where the live website is based off of. Think of branches as the exact same code base, but with like extra things that are built on top. So say you want to build a certain feature and you don't want to affect the main code base, you can just make a new branch, tell AI, hey, can you make a new branch for this code? And that way you're working on that project, on that item, that feature, separate from the rest of everything else. So maybe on my main Franklin A website, I want to work on profiles. I can have a profile branch and work on profiles. Once it's polished, ready to go, again, I can go into AI and say, hey, merge all these things together. That way your main branch is always up to date with the latest stable code, and all your branches have your test features that you're adding in. You're going to see here as well on your GitHub page. And just to be clear, the way I got this is if you click your icon in the top right, you can go to repositories and you can see a list of all your different repositories. You can also click commits. That is going to give you a list of different commits that you have added. And you can see this little number here, like I was talking about earlier. You can actually view everything that's happening at that point. So if we click it, you can actually see all of like the code and everything you saw before. But that number is important because you can actually tell AI, hey, go through my GitHub, look at this commit number and revert back to this certain point in time. Or you can even take it up a step and you can say, hey, can you compare this commit to my current build? Why did it work on that commit and it doesn't work on my current build? What did you change? What's different? So it has the ability to compare and contrast. And if you notice, this project does have 354 commits. You can get it pretty high. And again, everything I just showed you with GitHub completely free, so it is highly recommended that you use it for all of your coding projects. It's owned by Microsoft. You might have noticed at the top as well, they have something called agents, so you can actually add agents as well. And you can like learn more about that. It's a little bit more advanced. You can actually ask your AI model when you're vibe coding, hey, can you help me set up an agent in GitHub? And it will walk you through it. And honestly, with everything that Codex, Antigravity, or Claude Code gives you, don't be afraid to say, hey, I know I have to add an API key, or I know you're telling me to add something for this to work. Can you just give me a step-by-step guide on how to access that information or set this up? So maybe you want to set up an action on GitHub. And the purpose of that would be every single time your code gets uploaded to GitHub, maybe you want to send it to Vercel and update your website so your website's always live with the latest GitHub version. You can set that all up. The easiest way, literally ask AI. Have it help you to figure it all out. The last item I'm going to talk about for GitHub is at the top, security and quality. And here it tells you, hey, we have alerts for like malware, vulnerabilities. It's going to tell you which packages you have to get updated. Again, you don't have to know anything about any of this. Just literally you can copy and paste it all into any of the AI models and say, hey, fix this for me. And I know what you're thinking. I have 148. Honestly, I've fixed most of these in my live build, so nothing to worry about right now. Let's start talking about vibe coding purely on the web. So maybe you have a Chromebook, or maybe you just don't want to install any software. You want to simplify the process down. Just keep in mind there are some limitations. So you're probably not going to be building some app for your desktop. You're not going to have like a whole Python server running in the background. Maybe it's more for like a web-based application, which still serves its own purpose. Now, when we go to Claude AI, you're going to see on the left, when we're signed in, we have something called artifacts, and we can actually hit create an artifact. And from here, we can say, okay, what do we want to make? So maybe we want to make it like a quiz or survey, an app or a website, a document, a template, a game. So if we hit games, you're going to see here that it's going to say, hey, this was a great choice. And we're going to basically start talking to Claude to build our game. So maybe we want an action or arcade and we want it to be a solo game. So it's going to just basically go through some questions with us to make our game come to life. So we want it to be a platformer, run and jump, and here is our plan for the game it's making for us. It says what type of theme do you want? So I said space themed, and here you go. Here's what our game looks like, WASD. If we're happy with this, we can say yes, and it's going to start building the game for us. Now Claude automatically opens up this style window. On the left, we have our chat still, and on the right, we have all of our code where we can go back and forth between a code and the live preview, which I'm going to show you in just a second. So we can always go back and prompt it and say, hey, we want you to fix this up or make it better, change whatever we want, and it's going to go through and do all the changes we want. So you're going to see this come to life in just a second where we can actually publish this out and share it with a friend. In the meantime, I want to come to Gemini. I want to show you how to do the same thing on Gemini, but on Gemini, it works slightly different. You can actually force it and you can say tools, and we can toggle on canvas. In this same prompt that Claude Claude just made for us and we hit submit, now it's going to use that same canvas that we saw on Claude because we kind of forced it to happen. On ChatGPT, you're just kind of putting it in and hoping for the best. Claude, I only see game over. When I click play again, nothing happens. And it says, let me fix that bug right away. So it's going to adjust that bug. And you're going to see it said it flipped the button and hopefully it works. Claude, are you okay, Claude? All right, so now we have it fixed and working here. We can actually hit start game. We have our little like astronaut guy with some stars. We can go around collecting stars. We have little objects we have to dodge. Either way, we have just created this game with just Claude on the web. And you're probably wondering, okay, how do we share this out? Well, in the top right, there is a publish button. And when we go to publish it, we can actually copy the link. And if we paste this link in now, you're going to see we have an artifact link where we can actually share this out with whoever we want. So now they have access to the same little game that we made straight on Claude. So we don't have to like do anything fancy. We can just create little mini games right on Claude and then just basically make them work. On Gemini, we can go back here, and this one is still coding, but you can see we have like code, we have preview, and on Gemini, we can now see what this one looks like. Just like before, we can hit code, we can hit preview, you can hit start mission, you can see everything. In the top right, we can actually hit share, and we can hit share here, and that's going to give us a Gemini link that we can share out, and that's going to look like this, where we can actually start and play our game. But you're going to notice with all of these, you're kind of getting an ugly URL. It's like a Gemini link or a Claude link. It's not really a website. It's just like little fun little demos that you can just share out. And lastly, ChatGPT, just to show you what their web version looks like, we have their prompt, and it's just going to give you back all the code that you can like copy and paste over. And then I said, hey, can you put this in a canvas so I can actually test it out here? So it's going to build its own little canvas that we can test all these out. And now on ChatGPT, you can actually see here, we have like some buttons at the bottom. There's this little button here called share, and that's the only way of doing it. We can hit share, and now we can actually like copy the link, and it's just basically tells you the prompt, and it gives you like the game, and you can see what our game looks like here on ChatGPT, and this one's actually pretty good. We have like the same little green monsters. I think this one actually looks better than the Claude one. Oh, mission failed. We ran out of hearts. All right, so those are like the three bare bone basics ways of coding and sharing out your vibe coded projects through the web. And honestly, it's just a matter of going back and forth and saying, hey, can you add this? Can you add that? And to give you an idea of like what's possible, if you're on the Franklin A website, link in the description below, if you go to benchmarks, I have something called code test. And these are like single shot prompts that I do with different the games. So if you want to see like Angry Birds, this was actually done with one shot prompt on the web using like the newest version of Claude or the newest version of ChatGPT, and you can actually see what it looks like and you can just try it out and you can see the code. So if this was made using what you just saw on the web, you're able to make like fun little games like this. Claude, ChatGPT, and Gemini all will tell you if there's an error, and it'll try to fix the error for you when you're prompting them or when it's actually trying to run. So the way it works is through the console log. So you can actually hit here and it'll show the console. That's very similar to right-clicking on your browser, hitting inspect, and then coming down to the bottom and hitting console, and you can see all the different errors that exist. And again, if you're vibe coding on any platform, whether it's the web or on any of the apps that I showed you earlier on this video, you can just like copy and paste the errors in. For these ones specifically, you can actually see the console for this little window right here by just toggling this on and off. And it has the ability, we can say, hey, fix errors. And literally, what do you think it's going to do? It's going to copy and paste the error right into the window. And it's going to say, hey, we can fix this problem. And it says, I made some changes, added null checks, and it's going to fix all the problems. Again, you don't have to worry about any of these. Just literally click fix. It'll work for you. But again, depending on what platform you're on, you might want to right click and view console. All right. That is the bare bone. That's the easy way of vibe coding on the web using any of the large language models that are like the state-of-the-art models, Gemini, Claude, and ChatGPT. Let's take it up a step. Let's go to Google AI Studio. So we're going to go to aistudio.google.com. When you go to the website, you're going to get something that looks like this, and you can explore different like Google models that exist. You can see everything that's here. On the left, we have something called build. And if we click build, it's going to bring up this screen here. And this is going to use a version of Antigravity, but for the web. So maybe we want to like generate music. Maybe we want to have a database with authentication. So we want to have like a whole login system. We want to create and edit images. We can see all sorts of different stuff that we can like quickly add and use. We have an I'm feeling lucky button. So we can say, okay, create a guided meditation app that lets me generate custom sessions and unique visuals and voiceovers. And you can actually see what types of AI things are going to exist. If we hit build, this is slightly different. I'm going to hit allow notifications because it's going to actually just notify us when it's done building. But this is slightly different than the ones I was just showing you because this is going to actually use multiple files. So you can actually see here on the left, it is using Gemini Flash Preview, and it has like our preview here. We can also click code, and like I was just saying, this is going to have multiple files with multiple folders, and it's going to be a lot more in depth. This is going to be more similar to what we're doing at the beginning of this video. So the things you can do with aistudio.google.com is a lot more advanced than you can just by going to the ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini website directly. So you're going to see this is just building. On the left, we can like make changes, suggest features. We have the whole plus, so we can add files. You can see all of that. But where this gets really cool is we can like remix the platform or remix our project. There's also a share and publish, which I will show you as soon as it's done coding our sample. So now we can see on the left, again, here's all our little code. We can add AI features. It's going to give us like suggestions of things we can do. We can also like see, we can go right and we can see different ideas. So we can say, hey, add timer controls or whatever we want to do. You can see our application here. So it is a little bit more advanced. We have like actual AI tools that are built in directly into our application. Again, we can see code. We can see all the different files. You can go through, adjust everything. What's really cool about all this is we can actually like hit edit. We can like select anything. So we can say, okay, I want to change this logo here, and automatically adds it to the left. And you can see we have the ability to now talk to it about that specific code. So if you're vibe coding with AI Studio, they made it really easy to vibe code to make changes based off whatever you're looking for or need. So you can see that's kind of like what we're going for. Again, we can go back and forth using all of the different suggestions, different little tips and tricks that I've given you throughout this video, giving it like one feature at a time, making those lists, using different context windows, all that kind of fun stuff. Do all that. You can click new chat. That's how you can start the new chat. Do all those things, and you're going to create a pretty cool application. Now, when it comes to sharing, and actually, let me go back a step, you can actually see settings. So we can adjust system instructions. So we can say, okay, I want to make it do a certain thing, or don't use emojis, only use SVG icons, or you can make whatever changes you want. Now, if we come back here for a second, we can go back and we can see share, and we can actually decide who has access to this. So we can say anyone with a link now has access to our application, and that's sharing from a code perspective. We also have the ability to publish. So the chat history is going to stay private, and your app will be accessible through an actual URL. So this requires a Google Cloud project. If you don't have one, it's going to give you this like little link here. You can go to Google Cloud Projects, set one up. You can even click the drop down and hit create a project or import a project, but you want to set one up. And then when you hit publish app, you're going to actually get a good URL. So you know those little banners along the top where it said, hey, you can modify this application because it was vibe coded? Well, that's not going to show. So you can actually make a nice application using AI Studio without having all the banners. It's going to look like a real website, a real web app based off whatever you're looking for. And while we're talking about AI Studio, there's some pretty cool things you can do. So there is a version, and because I only have like one version here, you can see that's the current, but we can go through and we can say, okay, I want to restore this version or that version. So basically making a little Git history for you. We have secrets. So maybe we want to add in like a Gemini key. We can add that in, or we can select a key and we can like just link a key, and it's going to link one for us for Gemini. You can see different integrations we have access to. And of course, as always, we have access to GitHub itself. So we can sign in, and it's going to sync your program, your code with GitHub. So AI Studio is just like a really good piece of software that you can quickly use Google Tools to create anything you want. So we can see here, we're going to like start our meditation, and it's going to like generate a full session for us based off what we have asked for. So you can see having access to different built-in AI tools, being able to generate stuff with VO to generate videos, or Nano Banana to generate images, Gemini to do anything to do with like a large language model, all built into one vibe coding tool is pretty powerful because they can actually make real applications and quickly publish them to the web. I want to give you another option that is extremely powerful and also very popular. We have Loveable and we also have Bolt.new, and they're both very similar because they are completely on the web. So we are on Loveable. Let's start here. We're going to put in this prompt here. I want to make a simple shop where a user can purchase PDFs using Stripe. And you're going to see on the dropdown, just like I told you, as always, make sure you're on plan to start. We do have a plus if we want to add like files. If we want to say, hey, there's a certain design style we want, we can add that in as well. If we upgrade, there's different connectors. So these are all the different like plugins that you'd have on Codex, for example. And then we can also go back. You can also say databases, and we can add a Supabase, which I'm going to get to. I promise you, I've talked about it a lot in this video. We're going to talk about Supabase, but for now, we're just going to leave it on plan and we're going to hit go. Now, Loveable is going to start working on a plan, and we can actually say, hey, we want to be notified when you're done, but just let it work for now. Now, we're going to come back to Bolt. We're going to come back to Bolt and we're going to put in the same exact prompt. And here you can see we have access to different agents, and we can see Codex is coming soon. We're going to leave it on standard. We have like a design system. We can say, okay, now we can come on Bolt.new. I want to show you the same exact process. We have the plus where we can add like different connectors. We can manage them. So these are like all of your like different plugins, MCP servers. We can see like cloud options. We can see different knowledge information that it has access to. We can even see applications. And again, Supabase is here, and we can do like hosting. We can do Figma, and as always, all these tools have GitHub. It's truly like the standard universal system. So we have our prompt here. We're going to enable plan mode, and you can see here we can like pick out our agent that we want. Codex is coming soon. Yay. And we can hit generate plan. So all of these systems are very similar in a sense. You see the chat on the left. It's taking actions of what it's going to do. And very similar to AI Studio that I was showing before, these have the ability for multiple files. So you can see all the different files that it has already made. If we click here, we can actually see like database, which we're going to get to. And we can also see a preview whenever it's generated actual content. We're going to come back to Loveable because we have the same type of idea going on. And here we can see how will PDFs products be managed. And it says hard-coded, a small catalog, or maybe we want to have an entire admin backend that we can just do this with. So we have like two different options. I'm going to do the admin backend because I want to show you that we can actually set up a database. We can require a login, so we can do that as well. And do we want like the PDFs to be time sensitive or not? So you can see we have a lot of different options of what we want our application to look like, what we want it to be. So we can say create a minimalistic product, and we can hit submit. So Loveable is going to ask a lot of questions to fine tune what we're looking for. Why is it doing this? So it's going to make a proper plan based off what we want. It's going to use a lot less tokens, a lot less credits. We're going to spend a lot less money. We can go back to Bolt, and you can see Bolt is going to do something kind of similar. So we can see Bolt has an entire plan for us on the left, and it covers like everything possible. And here's a summary, and it says, here's some questions before proceeding. So I'm going to answer the questions like I want to use Stripe, and I want to use Supabase, which is going to be my backend database. And I have an account set up for Stripe. That's the next question asked. And I said, do we want to have a purchase tab? And I said, no, thank you. And it's literally saying, okay, here's everything we need. Here is the database that it's going to set up. And it's going to go through and make this all happen for us. Interesting enough, it did not listen about our database selection. It's saying, no, we're going to be using Bolt. So if we're happy with the plan, we can switch to build mode and it'll actually start building. So we can click implement this plan, and it's going to turn off plan mode automatically, and it's going to start building our plan out for us. And something you're going to notice with these tools when you're vibe coding, more often than not, it's not going to even listen to what you want or what you have to say. So you're going to might have to say it over and over again. You might have to be strict. You might have to be stern. Really kind of keep it simple. Be like, hey, you have to work on this. Listen to me. Here's what you have to change. That's why you don't want to overwhelm it with multiple changes all in one go. All right. So this one is working now. You can see it working through the plan, and it's going through that entire step step-by-step process that I was talking about before. It's made one for itself, and it's going through the plan to build our application for us. Let's come back to Loveable. Let's see what's going on here. And we can see on the right, here's our plan. And you can see like the different pages it's going to make, the data models, the flow, security, everything. It's just waiting for approval. We can say approve, and it's going to start working. It wants to say, do we want to allow notifications? Because this might take some time. When it's done, it's just going to pop up on our screen and be like, hey, come check me out. I'm done. I'm just going to hit X for now, and it's going to start building for us. Let's come back to Bolt. Let's see what's happening there. It's deploying functions and it's building, and we just kind of go back and forth and we can see what's happening. So all of these platforms are kind of similar. You're going to see a lot of overlap. There is like the whole build, there's the plan mode, there's all these built-in tools and things that you have available to you. But what's really cool about both of Loveable and Bolt is the multi-file setup, similar to AI Studio, so you're not stuck to one single file. Where these get really cool is in the top right for like Loveable, for example. If you hit publish, you can actually see a Loveable link that we have, or we can actually add a custom domain. So if you want to make this more professional, you can use your own domain. On Bolt, very similar. If we hit publish, we can actually see it's going to run a security scan to make sure it's not like a problem. It says, oh, there's one. And we can like review it and we can say, oh, here's what it found. And when we're ready to go, we can hit publish. In both ways, through Bolt or Loveable, you're going to get a professional URL. You can add your own custom domain. You can add a login system. You can add Stripe for payments. You can do all sorts of fun things. Bolt has made some good progress. In the bottom right, it actually says, hey, we're missing some secret keys for your Stripe. So we have to go to Stripe and get these API keys now, and we can actually access them. So if we don't know how, we can just ask an AI model, how do I get these Stripe keys? Or we can just go to Stripe. We can sign in. If we go to the top and we click settings, we can actually hit developers. And from here, you can hit manage API keys, and then you can actually create keys and enter the value here. And now we have an entire little PDF shop that we made. We can scroll through, you can see everything, and we have an entire website that we've made with payments. And we're like ready to go. We can hit publish, and it says publish this application, and it's working on it. And now you can see on our Bolt, we actually have a URL that we can use. It's this here. We can again add a custom domain if we want. Now I want to show you our database because this is important. This is where all your data will be stored. You can see orders here. If we had any orders, of course, we can go back and we can click here again. We can actually see our products. And under our products, you can see an ID, the name, the description, and this is storing all the data for our website. And to be clear, you don't need to have any background in coding or anything like that to understand what's happening with the database. But I'm going to try to break it down for you to make it really easy to understand in case you're wondering how it works. So we have a Supabase here, and I talked a lot about Supabase prior in this video. Supabase is a really popular website that you can create and store your database on, and it works with a ton of vibe coding tools like Loveable, Bolt, Cursor, Claude, Replit Agent, V0, and much, much more. So it's as simple as going to your agent, and when you're doing your vibe coding, you can say, hey, I want to store my data on Supabase. So when you're here in the top right, you can click dashboard, and I am already signed in. If not, you can just create a free account. And when you're here, you can see we have different organizations. So we can create an organization, or I have one that I've already set up. I just want to show you some sample data. And here I have 4 different projects that I've been playing with, and these are projects I've been using for videos. And on the left, we have different things. You can see like there's integrations, and you can see, of course, it works with GitHub. It works with Vercel. These are, again, just places. Vercel, you can host your data. GitHub is where you can store your data. So let's come back to projects. We're going to go to the Franklin AI test, and I just want to kind of show you how this all works because it's a lot easier than you think. So on the left side, you can see we have a side menu. I'm going to go to the table editor, and you can see here we have some tables on the left. So we have like boards, and under boards, you can see it looks like a spreadsheet. We have an ID, a title, and then we can see when it's created. And these spreadsheets, just imagine them, are able to talk to each other. So again, we have different unique IDs, UUID, we have titles, descriptions, and we have different things that we can just quickly access and use. We have lists. So a database is essentially different spreadsheets that are interconnected that can actually communicate and talk to each other. To show you how they're connected, we have boards here, and you can see the ID of the board, and it is a UUID, so it's a unique user ID. And then if we go to lists, within the list, you can actually see the board ID here. The board ID will match the board here. Our lists are actually connected to the board. Again, you don't really have to know or understand any of this. You can just talk to your AI model of choice, and you can just vibe code back and forth to get your database set up to have it store all your information, because it has to be stored somewhere. And Supabase is really good if you want to make a website of some sort and you want to store it online. If you're doing everything locally and you're building a web app that's going to be run local on your machine, or maybe you're building a desktop application, maybe you're using like a Python desktop application, you can actually store all the data in a SQL file all locally on your own machine. So the AI model is smart enough to know the difference. Just say, hey, if it is online, can we use something like Supabase? Supabase has some other fancy features as well. So they have something called authentication. So you can actually have a user ID, a display name, the email address, and like phone number and all sorts of information. So now the user can actually sign in. You can see the last sign-in date. So if you want to have a login system, you can use Supabase as one of your options. And they have email notifications. You can see sign-in providers. So if you want to allow any of these sign-in providers, so say you want to allow Google sign-in, it's as simple as coming here, enabling Google, and then going back and vibe coding back and forth to get what you want. Now, as I mentioned before, if your AI model has set up something and it says, hey, you need to enable this on a website, don't be shy, ask it and say, hey, can you give me step-by-step, once again, how to make this happen? Supabase is extremely powerful. You have sessions that you can keep track of, multi-factor authentication, and a lot more, such as storage. So you can actually store data on Supabase. Knowing all that, we come back to our Loveable example, and you can see what it has built. So we have like a storefront with some like admin options, and it says two things that need to be done in Stripe. So it's starting to build out our shop, and it is very similar to what I was showing you before. We can go back and forth. We can ask Loveable. We can do like visual effects. So it can just start a live preview, and we can start adjusting the visuals. We can add different files and history and knowledge. We can work with GitHub. Again, connectors, take a screenshot, add references. There's all sorts of features that are built in that you can just quickly access and use. Now, there's something I want to point out. On the visual editor, real quick, if we can like click anything, we can actually type now, and we can like make adjustments to anything we want, just using just natural language. And it's not an AI. It will actually work. Let's disable visual editor for a second. There's something I want to point out. So there's this little bar here. If we pull it across, you're going to see more icons that pop up here. If we click it, we can actually like pin additional icons if you want. So there is security. You can like scan your code. You can see payments. So we can explore different payment options. You can see we have access to cloud. So we have database, and you can see different database options. You can see storage and users, and you can see signups and everything else that I was talking about earlier. You can have access and see it all right here. Again, when you're ready, just hit the publish button in the top right, and you can actually get your URL. There are a lot of different platforms that work very similar to Bolt and Loveable. So another good option is Vercel, and Vercel is a way to host your data. So regardless of which one you're using, you can say, hey, Claude or Gemini or Codex or Loveable, any of them, hey, I want to host this on Vercel, and you can actually start uploading your data right to Vercel. And I just want to show you pricing because it is very generous. They have a hobby plan, which is completely free. You can start deploying, and it's again, very reasonable. At the top, we have resources, and if you go to docs, you can actually see on the left, we have access to a whole bunch of different things. If we click AI, you can actually see we have an MCP server, and this is going to give extra information to your vibe coding platform to understand how to deploy on Vercel. So basically, you can make your code on any of the ones I showed you for the offline section. For the desktop version, use the MCP server. You can say getting started with it or try it. And you could even just copy this code here or copy the URL, send it off to Claude, Codex, Gemini, and Antigravity, whatever you're using, and say, hey, can you get this MCP server installed using, like, I want to have the MCP server of Vercel installed on my computer. What that will do is it literally gives the AI model access to everything it needs to know about Vercel. So don't be shy to install MCP servers. add documentation from websites you want to interact and work with. And part of Vercel is a piece of software called V0. So V0 is here, v0.app, and you can see it looks very similar to what I was showing you prior. What do you want to create? You can ask what you want to make. We have some options down below. There is also templates that you can actually just start with. So you kind of get the idea. These are very similar. These ones integrate with apps. It is very similar workflow throughout. Just this one is literally made by Vercel, so it connects with Vercel, and therefore you can publish to Vercel very quickly. Now, if you want another all-in-one built-in solution, I'm going to show you Firebase. Firebase is extremely useful and powerful. It is created by Google. It has very good documentation, which means that the AI model can do a lot with it, and it shouldn't fail. It should be able to set it all up, get it hosted, and you can see it works with all of your favorite tools. There's a lot happening in Firebase. So if you go to console in the top right, once you're signed in to your Google account, you're going to see a screen that asks you to create a project. Once you do, you're going to get a screen that looks something like this. And I just want to show you on the left, there are so many different things you can do. So there is authentication. Let's start there. For authentication, we have sign-in methods, and you can add different providers of different things you want. So if you want email or login, you want to allow people to sign in with their GitHub, their Apple account, their Facebook account. There's so many different options that you can just quickly access and use. You can also see usage like daily active users, but where Firebase is extremely powerful is in the Firestore in real-time database. So Firestore is similar to that whole table aspect that I was showing you before, but they call them collections. So your AI model can create collections and store data underneath the collection. You can also do a real-time database. Imagine like messaging back and forth. You can see like when my games were created, it's storing all of this data automatically. And again, it's as simple as going to your AI model saying, hey, I am using Firebase for my project. Can you set this all up? I want to store my data, and it will decide, the AI model will decide whether it's Firestore or real-time database, maybe have that whole planning mode that I was talking about earlier on in the video, plan it all out, say, hey, can you ask me questions to ensure that you're picking the best thing for me? And your AI model will ensure with you before it goes forward with the plan. So you can see we have access to ways to store data, authenticate. There is also, at the bottom, there is also something called hosting. So you can actually host your entire web app directly on Firebase as well. So it's just a really fast way of setting up authentication, being able to sign in, register into your application, and then hosting it and storing all of your data in one location, one place. And again, the AI model is smart enough to know to read the documentation because this one is made by Google. Now, I want to talk about how you can use AI and use vibe coding to make your existing code even better, because it's kind of important to always go back and ensure that your current code that you have is as good as it can be before you build on top, before you add in those new features. You want to make sure that your existing base is a solid structure, a solid foundation to work on top of. So every so often, I will literally go to my vibe coding platform and I will say, hey, can you go through every single function I have, every single file, and check through all my code, check if there's anything that's unnecessary. I want you to clean it all up, figure out ways to make it faster and more efficient. And again, make sure you're starting with that plan before you do this. Make sure you have committed your most recent functional build to GitHub so you can always restore back. But instead of trying to ship out new features, really focus on what you have and try to optimize what you have. Another way I do this is when I have a web-based application, I literally tell the AI model to try it itself and check for the speed using something called Lighthouse. So we are on google.com here. If we right click and we hit inspect on your Google Chrome, there's something called Lighthouse, and it's used to track the speed of the page. The AI model has the ability, especially if you're using something like Claude Code, Antigravity, or Codex, it has the ability to actually use a browser and check this out itself. And you can say, hey, return me a table based off desktop and mobile, and I want to know the speed performance and everything else. And please keep working until you have this done for me, or you're under a certain speed point, or whatever you want it to do. It will literally go back and forth. The AI model will go back and forth until it meets your requirement. Now, you want to make sure you're taking security seriously. Make sure you're always checking checking to ensure that there's no obvious vulnerabilities. Those whole sub-agents I was talking about using Claude, it's a great way. Always check for security, how your database authorization works, how your just general authentication works. Make sure your security is always up to par. You can even ask the AI to explain like any potential problems, any security threats that your application might experience. And now probably the best advice I can give you is not to rely on one single model. I personally jump around all the time, every single month or every single week or even by the day. I will jump around from model to model. Some of them are much stronger in certain areas than others, and it's like a back and forth. So today this model might be the best at something, and tomorrow it might be second because another model jumped it. My point is, try to use as many different models as you can, or at least the top tier ones, Claude, Gemini, and ChatGPT. Use them to your advantage. Let them all work together and have them all working for you to give you the best output possible. And lastly, if you're working on a project that's on the web and it's live, or a desktop application that you're sharing out with other coworkers or whatever you're using it for, do not, or at least try not to, post and update your code to the main branch, because you want to leave that as stable and always test on a unstable, like a beta branch code, so you have two going. So it's that whole branching that I was talking about in GitHub within that video. Utilize that. It's a very powerful way to ensure that you have like a stable build where people are using it, and then you add a new feature, you can test it, and then you can push it to your main branch. One more quick one for you. If you have a code base that you have been vibe coding and you're noticing that it's not working as well as it used to, definitely have it set up a documentation file. Have it go through and document every single file that's in there. And within the files, say, hey, can you document the functions and variables within the files? So it's going to go through, it's going to make an extensive documentation for you, so it understands, the AI model understands what your entire code base is about without having to read every single file. It goes back to that whole context window that we're talking about earlier on in this video. Now, I want to talk about how to design and make your vibe-coded app look better. And you're going to notice very quickly that your vibe-coded app is going to use a lot of purples over and over again. And you can quickly see and say, hey, that app was vibe-coded because it's going to do a lot of the same aesthetic choices. A lot of the design choices are going to be very similar. So that's where something called Figma comes in. And Figma is a tool to make designs. And Figma is just one option. I'm going to show you two in this video, but you can see we have access to a little chat window using something called Figma Make. So it's just figma.com/make, and you can literally make anything you want. So create a landing page for a website about a bakery, and you're going to see that Figma is going to actually design a very nice looking landing page for us that the AI model won't be able to do, as well as what Figma is about to do for us. And while Figma is running, I'm going to show you one other option, and this one is called Stitch with Google, and it works very similar. You can do an app or a website, and what's cool about this one is you can use like a design system, you can import from a website, or you can pick any of these like presets, and you can decide your model. We're going to use the same exact prompt. I'm going to leave it on Flash, but just want to show you can like redesign an existing website or just kind of come up with ideas, and we can actually say, okay, we like this, let's make it happen. So we can actually say, okay, here's our prompt, let's make it happen. We can hit submit, and now Stitch is going to actually start working on our design as well. But let me come back to Figma because I want to show you what it's made, and here it is. So again, on the left, we have a chat. We can always go through, we can make adjustments to whatever we want. We can see we have a nice landing page now that looks pretty good. It's solid. We can always go back and make adjustments. We can see different versions, and then we can go to the top right. We can click here. We can copy our design, or we can go to the code. We can use the code. But the best way is the Figma MCP client. So you can actually see here, there are different guides depending on what you're using. You can actually install Figma right into Claude Code, Claude, Cursor, VS Code, GitHub Copilot, the list goes on and on. A lot of different apps that I showed you in this video. So you can see you have access to Figma in all these different places to make your app, your website, whatever you're designing look nicer. And again, you can see it looks pretty good, right? Relative to just using a normal AI platform. And then we have Stitch, which is Google's version, and you can see they have made an entire grid of everything that we have access to. So let's just flip to the hand for a second, and you can move across. You can see like the color palette. We can kind of keep going across. It's made different things. It made a little logo for us, and here is what their website looks like. So you can see that one looks really good as well. And we can say, okay, this is good. We can give it a thumbs up. We can start. We can also click it and we can make adjustments to whatever we want. And then where it gets really cool, at the top, we can actually use more additional AI. So we can do variants, instant prototype. We can see heat maps. We can do all sorts of fun stuff. We can also view the code or copy it to Figma or even export it, import this into our vibe coding platform of choice. And now we have an entire UI to work on. Again, don't be afraid to take screenshots of whatever you don't like and then say, hey, can you modify this? Really talk to the AI and tell it exactly what you're feeling. Tell it what you're vibing. So throughout this video, I talked a lot about MCP servers. And what are they exactly? It stands for Model Context Protocol. It's a way to integrate your large language model, whatever you're using to vibe code, and an external data source. So your large language model now has the ability to talk to any of these different applications, understand how they work, and not have to guess how they work. It is a really cool system that Claude made, and it basically became the standard. So I've covered quite a few within this video, just randomly scattered throughout, but there is a website called mcpservers.org, and you can see there is an entire list. So here I'm on the development tab, and you can see how many different MCP servers that exist just for development. So maybe you want to do After Effects, you can do that, and you can see how many different ones there are for just development. There's 85 pages. If we want to do web scrapping or search, or if you want to do something with communication, version control, there are so many different options for different servers. For example, we can search for Firebase. You can actually see we have the Firebase MCP server here, and if we scroll down, we can see like related servers. If we scroll down, it tells you how to get this set up and installed. So if we're using like Gemini CLI, it tells you how. If you're using Claude Code, it tells you how. It gives you different options to get the server set up. So now it had the ability to use the Firebase MCP server, and it can literally use the database, the authentication, the web hosting, everything I showed you that Firebase has access to. You can now use the MCP server and just have it work. Throughout this video, I've covered a lot of different topics, a lot of different options and ways for you to vibe code, and I've tried to make it as simple and easy as possible to follow. If you enjoy these longer form content videos, let me know in the comments below, and definitely consider subscribing. If you go on the franklina.com website, and if you go to top AI courses, this one is going to be here. So if you want to check out some of my longer form videos, and I say longer form, I'm talking ones that are over an hour, I have one on the ultimate guide to use Notebook LM, and also one to use Hilo to generate all sorts of different types of content. As you can see, there are a lot of different tools out there, and they all serve different purposes and different needs. Just have some fun and give it a try. Don't be afraid to just keep vibing and saying, hey, try this, and see what it comes back with. As long as you keep backing up to GitHub, you kind of can't make a mistake. You can always go back and restore at any single point in time to a good working version. The last tip I'm going to give you, and I don't think I talked about this one, is have a Word document or a notepad or something, a place to type and list different like main sections of your app, and then start making your list of what you want the AI model to work on. So you're not actually going to send this through, but it's a good way to maintain a good checklist of all the things you want to have done over time. Because you're going to have to sit around and wait and twiddle your thumbs, play a game, watch another video of mine while it's creating your code for you, because it will take some time in between. Let me know what your thoughts are on this video as a whole. Did you guys enjoy this longer form video? Is there anything I missed? Anything you want me to cover more in depth? Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to like the video. It tells our algorithm you enjoy this type of content and you want to see more of it. And definitely consider subscribing, because it's free, and if you made it this long, you can stand me for 2 hours. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow with another video.